clicked it. It's still spinning and spinning. Let's
No.
go.
I keep saying.
Oh,
things.
we're live.
Oh,
We did it. Took a moment, but we did it. Hello,
That was-
everybody.
dicey for a minute.
Hello, everybody in the future, because no
Hello,
one's watching live at
everybody.
9:20 in the morning. Was it smart of me to take a morning off of work to record this podcast? I don't know. But
We'll
Brian
know,
is...
we'll know in 2 hours.
We got Brian. We got me. Both here at the same time. Not as easy as you think, turns out. Here we are. We were together for a whole weekend in person. But
Yeah.
can't record a podcast like that.
No. Well, we have in the past.
Yeah. And it's harder. That was like the
It is hard.
people you'd assume if we're together it should be easier, but it's harder because we both need our computer.
It's
You
very
need, like,
much like Tay. Is it what was it? Tay's
on day.
Yeah, where like I step away from the microphone to breathe. Like that's how it's felt. I think we've recorded in the same building before, but in different rooms. Like in
Yeah,
the
I
same
remember we've done
household.
that. That was better.
That was better.
But I think this might be the best. Just as far away geographically as possible.
Hey, that's how we got started. So you would
Mhm.
think,
When we started, you were in Japan, like episode 1.
yeah.
Oh, there you go. Do you remember what, like, I think it was my morning. Was it my morning or was it your morning?
I don't remember. We flipped it a couple times.
Yeah. I definitely recall. Well, now I'm drinking coffee.
Oh,
on the
it was your
podcast.
morning because I remember the first episode, which I, sometimes I've listened to over the years a couple times, like the first 5 minutes. You sound so tired, like you you legitimately rolled out of bed.
It might just be how I talked back then. But okay.
Also possible.
All right, so let's just see how far we can get here on a part 2.
Love to see how far we can get.
Is that a real song?
Da, da. Yeah, you don't know it?
No. Is that
Oh,
it sounds like a
man.
musical.
My niece came home from sleepaway camp,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, what's the big song? Like, what's everyone singing?
And it's that one, like, to see how far we can get?
Yeah, exact. No, it's something called Nasty Boy. And I was like, by who? And she's like, I don't know. And then her mom or her grandmother was like, oh, is it Taylor Swift? And she's like, no, like, get out of here. Even though, like, that's like a pretty reasonable guess.
Is Taylor Swift, like, turning into, like, kind of cringe now for young people? Like, she was so overexposed that now liking Taylor Swift is lame?
I mean, I think when your grandmother guesses Taylor Swift,
It's over.
like, trying to relate, like, you have to shut that down. Like, you have to be like, no, like, get out of here.
Mhm.
Nice.
I think
good
Taylor Swift
try
might have
into
hurt
the
her career.
conversation.
These past 2 years of Taylor Swift mania has, like, maybe hurt her in the long run. Now everyone's going to be like, anyone who's like, who's your favorite singer? If you're like Taylor Swift, they're going to be like, get at it. Basic, lame. Like,
Yeah,
you should
I think
cheer for-
that'll probably happen if it hasn't already. But I don't think it's happened already.
You know what's fun?
yeah,
I've
what?
been searching for like different players as we're drafting for our Dynasty League, just like on Twitter, like kind of just seeing what the vibe is. And at one point we were considering drafting Cole Sillinger. We did draft Cole Sillinger. Every single
Yeah.
time you search on Twitter for Cole
Tate
Sillinger,
McRae.
it's all about Tate McRae and how
Yeah.
did he cheat on Tate. I'm like so deep in this. Did he cheat on Tate McRae or didn't he? And it's like,
I don't.
And
But you don't know.
well, he says he didn't.
Well, of course he would.
And then a lot of people are bigger fans of Tate McRae than of Cole Sillinger.
Yeah, I think she definitely has more influence and status than he
So
does.
people are like, he's like some nobody, and
Yeah,
like
what a
he
loser.
like, how could you be with Tate McRae and cheat on her? Who are you, Cole Sillinger? And I'm thinking like, he's Cole Sillinger. He was drafted like
He's Mike
overall.
Sillinger's son.
Oh, is he?
I
know that.
I think something like that,
That's cool.
or nephew. He's definitely in the family. Anyway,
Someone's
so
watching now, by the way. I hope someone
Who?
enjoyed this chat.
Well, I was actually going to add one more piece to it,
Please.
which was so like my niece is like singing. She's 10. She's like singing the song.
Oh,
like,
Nasty Boy.
I don't know. Like I come across her like 30 minutes later. She's with another kid her age who's a cousin, but like they don't really see each other more than once a year. And so, but like they're hanging out. They're like being like 10-year-olds together. Like the other cousin is like kind of dressed in like Avril Lavigne fashion,
Mhm.
which is like really interesting. That's that's back.
So baggy clothes.
No, like sort of like punk, like light punk pop.
Okay.
It's like tall, like knee high, like pink and black striped socks, a bag with like 14 buttons, pins on it, like the gloves that like your like cut gloves with the
Okay.
fingers cut.
Oh, cool
Yeah,
move.
no, it
Michael
was a
Jackson did
really
that.
impressive look to put together. To be honest, I don't know how, you know. Anyway, so like they were singing it and like, or they were singing something, and like I come in, my niece is like, you lie, why you gotta lie? Like I don't like just going on like, lie to me, you don't know every time you screw him, and I'm like, whoa, like I don't, is that nasty? I asked her what song that was, she didn't tell me, but like she's doing like a whole TikTok dance to it. I haven't told her parents because I'm a cool uncle.
Whoa, yeah, that would be. Oh, here it is. Every time I screw you.
That's wait, what? You found it already?
Well, I found on TikTok. Okay. Oh, this song's actually very profane.
It sounded.
It's a lot worse even
like
than what you said.
Had potential.
Pop Mood Swings featuring Lil TJ and Summer Walker. I think is that it? My Little
Mood
Mama
Swing.
Nasty.
By Lil Mama Nasty?
No, that's like a lyric in the song. Anyway, okay.
Lil TJ?
Remember
Pop
the Nasty
Smoke.
Boys?
I know
The
Pop
wrestling
Smoke.
team?
Yeah.
Okay.
What about them?
Oh, that's what when you say nasty, that's what I think of. I think of the Nasty Boys.
I actually did search Nasty Boy and I got a B.I.G. song and a picture of the Nasty Boys. Yeah,
right.
this song would not, like, even just knowing who the artist is wouldn't.
Well, you know how it is. Kids don't want to follow the rules.
Every time I screw. Okay.
Well, no wonder the kid rolled her eyes when her grandma was like, "Is it Taylor Swift?" Like Taylor Swift wouldn't sing like that.
Well, the grandma didn't hear that song, like
Okay.
the words to it.
All right, so let's start the pod.
Sleepwalking.
We got Rob here. No, you have a second viewer
What a
even.
special place.
So here we go.
Okay, I'm ready to talk about
Okay.
hockey players. Are
Let's
you?
do it. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes! Welcome everybody to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who are going to try their best not to just talk about the dynasty team we've been drafting over the past couple of weeks on this episode. I'm your host, Elon Dubrowski, and with me to break down part 2 of this series of indefinite length of all the free agent and trade activity of this NHL offseason, it is the fantasy hockey robot, the Poobah prognostication, the IPP MVP himself. It's Brian Combs. Brian, how's it going?
Good. Great. Happy summer, everybody, in case yours hasn't started yet or is just starting. And if it isn't, if you're in Australia, happy winter. Happy everything to everyone. I hope we're all doing well. It's a nice, like, hopefully, like low stakes, slower time of the year where we can kind of sit back and like look in big picture. But we'll also, try and dive deep into the littler picture for players too. But also, like, we can look at all this without knowing that there's a chance we're going to get it. Like, we're going to be like terribly impacted by this within a week. So we can sort of speak from an arm's length distance and just I don't know. I feel a little looser. I feel
Okay.
I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think that someone is going to have to need to go back and get a transcription of what that last thing you said was.
I don't
and we'll
know what I was
understand what
saying
it was.
anymore.
But I like the idea. We're going to be loose. We're going to have fun. So previously on Keeping Karlsson, we talked about Nashville. I'm just because we're continuing, right? So just for people who, if you didn't listen to the last episode, you missed the chats about Nashville and like Stamkos and Marchessault and Shea and all that stuff. We talked about Tampa Bay getting Gensel. We talked about Vegas and how they've lost everyone. We talked about Sergachev going to Utah. We talked about Seattle signing Montour and Stevenson. We talked about Elias Lindholm going to the Bruins. We talked about Jake DeBrusk, and then we ended Jake DeBrusk going to the Canucks, of course. Then we ended in Ottawa, where we talked about the Linus Ullmark trade. And how Brian has, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, you said you had some confidence that this might be the one Ottawa goalie acquisition that actually works out better than the rest. But then we said we're going to continue talking about Ottawa on part 2. So here we are. And I guess the next big thing that has happened over on the Ottawa Senators is this trade which like I was saying on a Patreon cast recently, how like there's been a few trades over this offseason that have just made me like have to question my ability to value players. Like I just feel like there's been some trades where I'm just like, wait, he was traded for him? I thought this guy's so much better than this guy. And this was definitely one of them because the Senators traded Jacob Chikrin for a guy on Washington named Nick Jensen and a third. And Nick Jensen is someone I don't think we've ever really talked about on the podcast. You look at his stats, and he's been around. He doesn't get a lot of points. I assume we're looking at a guy who has a big defensive impact. Offensively, only 14 points in 78 games. Compared to Jacob Chikrin, who obviously was a more impactful offensive player, at least 41 points in the 82 games. But yeah, so we look now at the Ottawa Senators minus Chikrin plus Nick Jensen. I'm going to assume we have no interest in Jensen for our fantasy purposes. Is this going to be the year now where like you definitely want Jake Sanderson? Like I know like, for a while we were like, it's coming, Jake Sanderson. And then Chikrin came, and maybe then he had to share a little bit. But now it's like you got Shabbat, you got Sanderson. I'm just curious to get your updated take on the Ottawa D and how high we're drafting a Jake Sanderson in fantasy next year.
Yeah, it still feels mucky to me. Like the challenge going into last season in Ottawa was you had Chikrin, Sanderson, and Shabbat. And the question was, well, which of these guys is going to step up and be a power play quarterback and lead the offense? And the answer was, I think, sort of what we thought at the start. Like at the start of the year, we thought maybe there would be. We were hoping for clarity. We wanted an answer. An answer never really came unless the answer was no one. Like it's just going to be a bunch of guys doing like okay, and that's it. I still get the sense of where Nick Jensen fits in the lineup yet to be seen. Like he could be the number. Like I think he's going to be a bottom pairing defenseman. Although he does shoot right, which could put him on the top pairing or second pairing, actually. But he plays like a bottom pairing defenseman. So his minutes should be decent just by virtue of the fact he shoots right. And then beyond that, I'm not sure what exactly the impact here is on Shabbat and Sanderson. I feel like it's about as murky as it was. You know, I think I'm actually going to look to the forwards in Ottawa to try and figure out can they split two units? And of course, we have a new coach in Ottawa too, so we don't know how things are going to run. But in the past, the Sens haven't been afraid to just be rolling two even units, and I think they still have the personnel to do that. They've got. I'm going to try and name 8 forwards. You've got Stützle, Tkachuk, Norris, Giroux, so that's 4, and then you've got Batherson, Perron, Pinto. And then, like, I don't know, throw anyone, Michael Amadio or Ridley Gregg.
Ridley Gregg, I think. He counts.
Throw someone else up on that. So I think technically there's enough. Are they even? No, like, I think there probably is enough to max out one unit. And if they do, my clubhouse leader for who's going to quarterback it is Shabbat. I think he still gets it, like, from having seniority and incumbency. But I can't rule out Sanderson. The challenge with Sanderson, though, and trying to get on that train early, is that he doesn't do like a whole lot of fantasy relevant things if he's not producing, which last year he had a 40-point pace in his second full season in the league, which is really good. He had 14 power play points with about a 50% share of power play time. So to me, that's honestly, it's almost enough to take him anyway, even if I do think Shabbat is going to be starting on the top unit, because Shabbat's never really been more than a 50-point player. So if Sanderson can still... the million-dollar question remains, how is Ottawa going to deploy their 2 power play units? Because if Sanderson doesn't see a 50% share, then he probably ends up closer to 30 points than 40 points. But I think because Shabbat's upside, unless Travis Green can unlock it, he seems really stuck. There was the one season, his second in the league, where Shabbat had a 64-point pace, and that was thanks to 16 power play points, but also 14 goals. He shot. He still hasn't shot as much in any season since then as he did that year, and his shooting percentage was also high. this is a lot of talking about what is true about the situation in Ottawa with acknowledging that there's still a lot of unknown. I think, I think I'll give Shabbat the upper hand, but I'm not going to rule out the fact that it could be Jake Sanderson's turn to take the helm, only because Shabbat has never been a big power play producer.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I'd probably guess like Sanderson actually gets top power play, but we'll find out. Travis Green, new coach. We'll see what he does. And then as far as the forwards go over in Ottawa, I guess the biggest name they signed is David Perron. Maybe the biggest name they signed is Shane Pinto, who got extended. And they had to trade away Matthew Joseph and give away a third to dump him, I guess, to make the cap space to sign Shane Pinto. But now they've got Pinto, they've got Perron. I assume at this point we're not going to be like pumping up Perron. I think they've got a top six without him. Like you were naming some guys. If we went like Stützle, Giroux, Tkachuk as the top line, then Pinto, Batherson, and Norris, say the second line. So then there you go. So Perron is, I'm guessing, a bottom sixer, not someone we're interested in fantasy anymore, unless you'll disagree. And then, I don't know, they signed Amadio. You brought him up. And they signed this guy, Noah Gregor, who hits a lot. So maybe if you're in a Bangers league, you can look at him. But yeah, I think pretty much, I'd say, the fantasy landscape stays pretty much the same in Ottawa going into next season. I don't think there's any obvious things that we need to like recalibrate.
Yeah, I think the one thing to note in Ottawa is Shane Pinto is about to play a full season. Remember, last season he was suspended for reasons we still don't fully understand, but something about rules around gambling. So
I thought
now
it was I thought it did come out. He did an interview. He did proxy betting. Like he got a friend to put a bet for him, but who cares? Okay. Anyways, yeah. Shane Pinto's going to play full season. Do you think he's like, is this a breakout year?
I think it's possible. I think he looked really good in the time. He looked better than I was expecting in the time that he did play last year. And so now he gets like a full training camp. Like he had a 54-point pace last season over 41 games. He took almost 3 shots a night. His shooting percentage was like very modest. He had 6 power play points from like a number 1B kind of power play deployment, which is sustainable. So yeah, I think Shane Pinto is someone that a lot of folks might be sleeping on just a little. In that he's the other fantasy impact that I was going to mention is Tarasenko's gone, right? And that takes some teeth out of playing further down the lineup. So you'll have the top line in Ottawa. Say it's Tkachuk, Norris, Batherson, or some mix. We also don't know if like Josh Norris, like, can he still play? Does his shoulder exist? We'll find out this season in hopefully not a heartbreaking fashion. I still think there's enough there, but if you're not on the top line, I guess you're playing with Norris or Stützle. That's the hope. So
I thought I threw out 2 pretty good lines: Stützle, Giroux, Tkachuk, and then you have Pinto, Norris, Batherson. That's 6 good players. So I think I agree with you. I think Shane Pinto is going to have 2 good wingers somehow of those 6 people. And I think he would be a fun swing late. Like I think both Pinto and Sanderson are guys that are probably falling based on just their total numbers from last year. I could see at least one of them. It's like, I can't say which one. One of them's going to be really good. Yeah, hopefully. For Sens fans, they're hoping.
Yeah, and we'll see, like, between Pinto and Stützle, like, Josh Norris is a natural center, and so is Shane Pinto. Stützle can play center, but has also played wing. And so, so Pinto could either be a third line center or a second line center with Stützle playing wing on one of the, like, somewhere in the top 6. So we'll have to wait and see exactly how things get deployed, especially with a new coach. One thing overall that I want to mention about Ottawa, and forgive me for
you love the Sens.
Oh, well, no, they have a new coach. That's it. I'm not speaking, this isn't out of love. This is about confusion generally, in that, like, there was so many unknowns about Ottawa and how they deploy their pieces last year that I feel like we sort of got answers on, but now everything's unknown again, and it's kind of frustrating. But Travis Green, from reading when he was hired by the Sens, the one thing he seems to have learned in his previous NHL experience is like systems are important and discipline is important, but to not like go crazy, like to not be intense. Like you remember the like everyone mentioned like the Canucks skate where he bag skated them and like people were like puking and he was just like, well, that's their fault for not being conditioned. Do you remember that?
No.
Okay.
Sounds funny.
Yeah, I think like Ekman Larson was throwing up, and there was Connor Garland maybe. Like I can't remember exactly who. So I think he seems to have learned from that experience that like maybe that wasn't the best tack, but I think he is still like a really staunch, rigid systems guy. And staunch, rigid systems guys usually at the start don't provide a lot of offensive opportunities, right? Like players are asked to play a very specific role, play it a very specific way. And then if the system works, the offense will flow from it. But the first quarter, maybe even first half of the season is spent figuring out exactly how this is going to work with the pieces in place, both by the coach and the players. So that's just one kind of, I'm just going to toss that out there as a thought that if any Sens, they need to come out hard out of the gate this year because they've really struggled the last two. But if they do stumble out of the gate, I wouldn't necessarily, right, we'll talk about it in October, November based on what happens, but I would be prepared for a slow start just in case that's what happens. And
Okay.
I also, last thing.
More
I also
about
just,
Sens.
well, I was just checking out Ian Mendez, the Sens beat writer for The Athletic, put together his forward lines, potentially, his potential depth chart, and he has Shane Pinto as third line center, FYI.
Come on.
Well, you have Stützle as your first line center.
And
That makes
Norris.
sense. And Norris is your second line center. So unless you
Yeah.
move Stützle to the wing, which I'm not sure Ottawa wants to do.
Or
I think
Norris to the wing.
Well,
Yeah.
Norris doesn't, he can't play the wing.
He can't play at all. No, I don't
Yeah.
know. Okay, yeah, you're
Well,
right. We'll
we'll
find
see.
out in training camp.
Yeah. All right. So there you go. So Shane Pinto, possible sleeper, but also possible sleepy.
Yeah, for sure. So that's funny. Okay, so over in Washington, so let's talk about Jacob Chychrun now, who at one point there was a season where he was like one of the top fantasy defensemen, at least for our Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League scoring system, with all the shots, and he had a lot of blocks. This is already like a while ago. It was 2020-21 in Arizona. He ended with 41 points in 56 games, was taking 3 shots a game, had more than a block a game, around a hit a game. So he was really good. That was a 60-point pace. Since then, he hasn't been as good. Actually, though, a couple seasons ago, he did pace for 56 in between Arizona and Ottawa. Though that was the frustrating season where Arizona sat him out like a million games because they were planning on trading him. But yeah, then last season in Ottawa, his first full season in a while, 82 games. Nice that he got all the games. Only got 41 points. He did take 2.5 shots a game, which is really good. He's going to Washington Capitals team that, of course, has John Karlsson and definitely not enough depth to run 2 even power plays. They do tend to put Ovechkin on both power plays, though at this point maybe that's becoming less and less of a value to the people with Ovi. Not to discredit. I'm sure he'll get himself another 20-something goals this year. But yeah, Chychrun, are we just going to expect another 41 points, kind of what he just did in Ottawa, or do you have any reason to expect him to improve or hopefully not get worse? But what's your take here? What he's in a contract year. I know some people like to say contract year means the player is going to play extra hard. So this is his chance to try to earn that big payday he's been wanting for a while.
Yeah, it's a nice landing spot for Chychrun because if he proves himself in this year, the Caps might see him as the heir apparent on like their power play quarterback. John Karlsson turns 35 this January, so he still has a few years left, right? He's still going to keep playing. I'm trying to see. Oh man, I miss Cap Friendly so much. I would normally. Oh yeah, he has 2 years left on his contract. Thanks, Frozen Tools, by the way. Has that info. Way to go.
I like Puckpedia. I'm going to throw it up there. I feel like
me
everyone's
too.
saying how much they're sad about Cap Friendly. I've been using Puckpedia these past couple of weeks.
Yeah.
A pleasure. I think it's a really good website.
Shout out
Not a
to-
paid advertisement.
Shout out to Puckpedia. Not
They're doing
paid.
good.
They don't need to pay me. Cap Friendly never paid us. You just put out a good product that we can use
I
on
know.
our show, and we will credit you and love you because you help make the show possible. So thanks, Puckpedia. But I used to have keyboard shortcuts to get to Cap Friendly. I haven't.
I
set
already
them up.
updated. I updated my
good.
shortcut to Puckpedia.
So,
I press P, then I press space, and then I type the player's name.
Yeah.
Right to their page.
So
Beautiful.
I need to fix that for me. Anyway, John Karlsson has 2 years left, so Chychrun's going to be a free agent when Karlsson has 1 year left on his contract. So that does present an opportunity of sorts, even though who are you quarterbacking on that top unit if you're there for the next 5 years? Unclear. There's not a whole lot of upside coming through the system. But Jacob Chychrun, like you said, Elon, yeah, I think you could expect another 40, 45 points. Last season, Chychrun, his shot rates actually went down, but his minutes went up compared to the year before. Actually, that's not like barely up, not up by much. So we still want to see Chychrun shoot more. Like going back to that huge season, right? And it would be nice to see Chychrun block more too, but he sort of has toned down both those pieces of his game. And now he's a 40-45 point player, maybe 50. The one thing that I see where he might be able to pick up his game is there's been one season, it was that big season again, the best one where he shot 10%. I'm not sure he can get up there again, but if he can, he might be able to improve, but I actually don't see any reason why he should. So all this to say is I'd expect more of the same from Jacob Chychrun in
Cool.
Washington behind John Karlsson.
Yeah, and there's some other interesting guys here. Washington has had a very big offseason. So there's another big defenseman signing they made. They signed Matt Roy to a long-term contract. Obviously, that's more of a defensive thing. If you're in a multi-category league, Matt Roy last year had 152 hits and 197 blocks, so not too shabby. Only 25 points, but that's what you get with a Matt Roy. They still have Rasmus Sandin, so it seems like a pretty solid decor to play in front of. Now it's Lindgren, and I don't believe we've discussed yet the fact that they traded for Logan Thompson. Another one of those trades where I was like, I thought that Logan Thompson was like valuable. Like I thought he was like the type of guy that like in like a dynasty league you like covet him as like a good prospect goalie, but Vegas just tossed him away for what was like a second, a third. So Logan Thompson is there now, so that'll be, I think I see that as a 50-50. We talked on the last episode, I believe, or maybe a couple ago, about the Dubois for Kemper trade. But I think at the time we said, like, let's not look into the Washington goaltending because they're obviously going to get someone to be there with Lindgren, and now we know who it is. It's Logan Thompson. So I guess the question to you, I guess, as far as the goaltending, yeah, do we see this as like a 50-50? Do you think one of them, do you think it's like Lindgren as the incumbent sort of is going to be the potentially have a chance to be like a 60-40, 65-35 starter, or do you see this like going 50-50? Like I kind of see it 50-50 personally, but obviously it depends how they play.
I'm also going to call it 50-50 between Lindgren and like I think you just summarized it very succinctly. 50-50, but depends on how they play. We've seen Logan Thompson play well for longer stretches than we have seen Charlie Lindgren play. Like Lindgren's thing was there were times where he looked like the real deal last season and he had taken the job, and then like he had like a couple epic collapses in a row and couldn't continue like doing what he did, and like so confidence was lost. So he's sort of been like this kind of up and down player, although on the whole he had a good season last year. If I look at my usual number that I look at to evaluate goalie performance, which is Delta Fenwick save percentage, which is in a very simply described as performance above expected, based on the difficulty of shots that he faced. Lindgren finished 5 save points above his expected number, and Thompson finished like 1.5 save points above his expected number. So, and that is with all the ups and downs of Lindgren's year. So I could see Lindgren kind of getting the nod to start out. Like he was already there. Seems fair, seems reasonable that he'd get to continue being, or like get first crack at being the guy. But I could also see Washington going back and forth. And last year, one huge frustration, as somebody who drafted Darcy Kemper and then like occasionally brought in Charlie Lindgren, is that I could not figure out the pattern for how Washington was deploying their goalies. And I don't know that that's going to change. So if you want to ride with either Lindgren or Thompson, the challenge for you is going to be figuring out which nights you can rely on them to start. For what it's worth, both had a 60% quality start percentage, and they both also had 6 really bad starts in a similar number of starts total. So again, I'll give Lindgren the advantage, but I wouldn't rule out Thompson at all as being someone who just shares the net.
Yeah, so probably just neither is too exciting to draft in fantasy going into a season. Maybe it's the kind of thing where, you know, there is a strategy that I kind of like where if you are fading goalies and at the end you just take both goalies on a team where it's kind of an unknown situation because maybe one of them will win the job, then you just like drop the others. You know, if like in the last couple of rounds, if you still have Lindgren and Thompson both out there, grab them both with the hope, that they're not just splitting it, because who knows, right? It looks like it could be a split, but who knows? Maybe Thompson doesn't integrate well. Maybe Lindgren goes back to how he used to be. So I guess yeah, that's the goaltending there. A lot of changes also at forward, right? So they got Dubois. That's the big one where we'll see, and we already discussed this. Like, is he going to be able to go back to the 65-ish point player he was before that disaster last season? There, like, I was reading a bunch of interviews with the coach, so I'm going to have to do it, Brian. So yeah, Brian and I have been drafting for this dynasty league since July 8th. It's been a lot of fun. We've pretty much filled out our team at this point. Where it's a 26th round pro draft, and we're in round 22 right now. There was a point where we were considering drafting Dubois, even though he has a crazy contract. I was just like looking into it, and according to the coach Carberry, like he was like being all, we're gonna give him like every opportunity. Like I relish the challenge of bringing him back to like the player he was, and like I'm gonna I think anyways from what I read, it seems like you could lock in probably at least to start the year a Dubois like top line, like top power play for sure. So we'll see how that goes. They've signed Andrew Mangiapane, who was once in a while someone we would mention on the podcast as someone worth streaming in from the Flames. So he's there. They've signed Taylor Radish. Remember last year there was a point where people were thinking Radish was going to like play with Bedard and do something on Chicago. That didn't really ever work out. So he's probably just a bottom six guy. We had a question on our last show in the chat. Chris was there, and he asked us to try to project the top power play, assuming Oshie doesn't come back. Apparently, Oshie's like on the fence. He's trying to figure out how he can, be healthy enough to play. Brian, who's our top power play here if Oshie is not there? Like, I mean, it's probably okay. We got to say it's Ovechkin and Dubois and Dylan Strome. I think those are the obvious ones. So then we just have to pick a fourth forward out of like McMichael, Tom Wilson, Mangiapane. Do you have a favorite for who's taking that spot?
My guess, I'm gonna go with Tom Wilson. I feel like I feel like again, teams love to, and like for good reason, right? Like they give good opportunities to their incumbents, but I don't think that they're going to wait very long necessarily to give Andrew Mangiapane a shot. And I guess like Tom Wilson isn't even a slam dunk because he's spent stretches on the top unit, but he's never been a mainstay. Like I'm looking at his career power play share. It's never been higher than 50%. It's been in the 30s and 40s for most of the time since he started showing any kind of offensive moxie. So, Mangiapane, Elon, if I had to take a guess, I think that's where I'd go. You didn't mention Sonny Milano, who I think is another possibility, who could show up on the top unit.
Yeah, I guess every once in a while. Wait, Sonny Milano. I'm just looking it up now to make sure. Is Sonny Milano's still there?
He's there.
Oh yeah, he signed a 3-year. Good for Sonny Milano. For a while, it looked like maybe he wasn't going to go anywhere, and now he's got a 3-year contract. Is he taken in our dynasty league? He probably is.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I was probably at the time like, why would someone take him? Is he even signed? I didn't even look it up. So, okay. That's the Caps. So we mentioned that they signed Matt Roy. I don't think there wasn't much to talk about there. But let's go to the team that lost Matt Roy, the Los Angeles Kings, who lost a few people, right? They lost Matt Roy. Victor Arvidsson also was a UFA, so he's gone. They traded Dubois. Obviously, the Kings fans are probably happy about that. We already talked about the goaltending now. Kemper is going to be there with Rittich, I think. Yeah, so we were saying maybe Kemper could be a sneaky pick. Cam Talbot has signed with Detroit. We'll get to them later. The one signing, I guess, on defense to replace Matt Roy, like Joel Edmondson. I saw a lot of tweets from LA beat writers being very upset that it's like, so you traded Dursey away for kind of nothing. Then we lost Matt Roy, and then we like got Edmondson, who like I think mainly is not expected to be an impactful player for this team. So I feel like Kings beat writers are a little frustrated with how the defense has turned out. Maybe Brant Clark comes in and just makes everyone forget about the loss of Roy and Dursey over these last couple of years. But yeah, I don't think I guess for next season it's going to be the same question as like this year, right? It's like it's Drew Doughty's, Drew Doughty's the top defenseman to draft until like Brant Clark finally takes over. I guess first he has to like make the team and play a full season. It's always possible that Clark gets a top power play spot at this point, but I think like you go into it probably just expecting Doughty to be similar. And then as far as the forwards go, they traded for Tanner Jeannot. Obviously, he's not the guy that had that one great 20-plus goal season. Last season on Tampa, he was nothing, and Tampa, I guess, decided to cut bait there. They signed Fogel from Edmonton. I'm talking about the Kings here, right? I'm trying to find something to glean that's like fantasy relevant, so I can throw a question to Brian that will be interesting. So far, I haven't come up with something yet. So here's my question, because the other thing they did, which is maybe the most impactful, is they extended Quinton Byfield to a 6-year contract. I think a lot of people are thinking that this was actually a really good deal for the Kings because Byfield is expected to really have a breakout, and he's 6 by only 6.25 mil. 5 years, 6.25 mil. I apologize. Do you think, Brian, that this is is it coming up this year that Byfield's going to make that contract look like the huge bargain, or do you think it's still a couple years away? I'm curious to get your take on Byfield going into next season, especially now with Dubois out of the picture. I know they're saying that Byfield might switch to center. I don't know if that's good or bad if he has to go to the second line. What do you think?
I think it's good. The thing is, in LA, their second line can sometimes be that Deneau line, right? Like it depends on how they want to deploy that sort of checking shutdown presence. Kopitar plays that very well, or has historically played that very well himself. But we know, like last year, the Deneau, Arvidsson, Moore line, when Arvidsson was healthy, got leaned on a fair bit to do some heavy lifting. And so now I guess trying to figure out where Byfield fits in. I mean, the story so far is that Byfield, was drafted in the same draft as Lafreniere and Stützle. He hasn't had the big opportunity yet, but last year we started to see Byfield coming into his own. And I think the long-term plan in LA is for Byfield to take over, like be the new Kopitar, be that franchise top-line center, and that they're trying to bring him along. They're trying to teach him the way. They're not throwing him into the fire. It seems like there's a more purposeful development path for Byfield than there has been for Lafreniere, but he also wasn't as show ready as Stützle was in Ottawa, nor was he thrown into an opportunity to do that either. So I think Byfield, the way I see him is quietly plying his trade, learning from playing on Kopitar's wing, and now being given the responsibility of saying, okay, now you are going to center your own line, take everything we've taught you so far, put it into practice. And then, Kopitar's just got a couple years left, right, on this contract. I mean, he's 36 right now. He's signed for 2 more years. Maybe he does a team. If he can play at 39, then he can take a team-friendly deal at the end. But at that point, if LA's contending, Byfield's going to be their number 1 center. And that's what I'm excited for, because Byfield was looking last season like he was up for the job. He was moved to the wing, but he started shooting more, attempting more shots, playing more, being in positions of greater responsibility than he ever had before. He saw almost a 50% share of power play time, seeing repeated stints on the top power play unit. He had 14 power play points in 80 games in a 56-point pace season. And I'm just hoping that Byfield continues sort of this upward trajectory. He turns 22 in August. And so he still might be a year or 2 away from the breakout, but I also remember all the hype about him in his draft year. And I think that breakout could happen any day now. Can it really happen as a second line center or third line center, depending on where you slot that Deneau line in? I'm not sure. That's the big question. And that's why I might still hedge and say we're not going to see peak Byfield yet. We might see another 55, 60 point season as he tries to do again what he did last year, but from center instead of the wing. So I think I'm still going to temper my expectations for this year, but I think we should just constantly be on breakout watch for Byfield.
Yeah, if he's falling too far in drafts for 1-year leagues like the cupful, I think you jump at some point. Worst case, he's a 50, 60 point guy and not a 70 plus. But I think you're definitely going to get something out of him. Don't go too crazy expecting, point per game for next season. But I think he'd be a fun guy to swing on. And Brian and I grabbed him in our Dynasty League. So I'll be really excited to see. But we're also we're okay. He could take his time. I don't need to win season 1. We're looking to win I don't want to give away all of our strategy. But I think if you look at our team we've drafted so far, it's a lot of young, exciting players that will hopefully be tearing up the league in a couple years. And Byfield is definitely exemplary of that, hopefully. I'll throw it out there. A tweet from Russell Morgan back on July 5th projecting opening night lines for the Kings. I see it as a team that there's going to be an opportunity for someone to do something that no one's expecting, right? Like he's projecting Kopitar, Kempe, and Alex Laferriere. So he's a guy who might get an opportunity. Then Byfield centering Fogle and Fiala. So maybe Warren Fogle could be interesting, especially if Byfield is having that breakout. And obviously Fiala is a great guy to be playing with. And then, Deneau, Moore, and Russell Morgan is projecting Tanner Jeannot to take the Arvidsson spot, which I guess makes sense. It's like a shutdown guy. Obviously, who knows? But potentially there could be someone slotting into a high spot in the lineup that is going to be available as a free agent in the first week of the fantasy season.
Yeah, and I'm going to do something that you probably wouldn't expect me to do, Elon, but I'm going to say that one of those possibilities is in net. Like you already said, Darcy Kemper is there, and Cam Talbot, did well, so why couldn't Kemper? But David Rittich last year had a really good season. Like Rittich is not someone who I've historically believed in, but he played 16 save points above his expected number, which at 5-on-5, which is huge. Now, small sample, like that's only in 24 appearances, but he won 13 out of 22 starts. He had a near 65% quality start percentage, which is fantastic. He had, out of those 22 starts, only one really bad start. And actually looking back at Rittich's history, since he left Calgary, he hasn't blown up often. He blew up in Calgary a whole lot. But since then, and he hasn't played a whole lot since then, granted too, but still, like his ratio of really bad starts to starts is much friendlier now. And I wonder, Elon, if Rittich could actually be the 1A or straight out starter, because Kemper has been on the flip side of what Rittich's been doing. Kemper has struggled. The 2 years before this last one were good for him. This last one at 5-on-5 was like it was below average. Like it wasn't great. It was on the wrong side of his expected number, but his raw number was an 890 save percentage and 47% quality start. So I don't know, when I'm comparing that to a guy who had a 921 save percentage and 65% quality starts, I think I know who I'd like. I think Rittich could be your opening night starter, and I think he might see more than Kemper. And I want the Kings starter the same way you wanted Cam Talbot last year. I want the Kings starter.
Okay, that's Brian's opinion.
What do you think about that?
I think I disagree strongly.
You think? What do you think?
I think Darcy Kemper is going to be the starter on opening night, and I'd be willing to bet you a lot of money. I think David Rittich is nothing but a backup, and if he had a few good games last season, that's great. But
that's so I've also funny. I thought you loved
also, Brian,
David,
we had
David
a show.
Rittich. I thought you loved David Rittich.
What? Since when?
I don't know. Every time I poo-poo David Rittich, I feel like you're like, oh, but maybe Rittich would be good. Okay.
I don't recall. But
we're ships passing in the night on this.
I also feel like we just did a couple shows ago. We were talking about all the goalies that had moved around so far, and I feel like you were the one who was like, Kemper looks like the best guy of all.
I was. I was, and I did, and I still I think I'm trying to come up with a bit of a hot take here, like because you're saying someone's going to show up, and we won't know it until they do, and so I wonder if Rittich could be the guy. I don't know. Like the more I look, the more concerned I am about Kemper, and the more interested I am in I
think
Rittich.
Kemper's going to get a leash, and I think they're going to give him a chance to establish himself, and maybe if he really stinks for a month or two, they'll see. And I don't know if David Rittich is going to be the answer at that point. I definitely would not recommend drafting David Rittich, but maybe based on what Brian is saying, I mean, obviously we can watch training camp. We can see what happens. Maybe at some point, if Kemper is faltering, then it doesn't hurt to make a speculative ad of Rittich at that point. But I don't think I'd be wasting a draft pick on Rittich. I'm pretty I definitely would be willing to bet you
on Rittich.
The one thing I would definitely bet you on if you want is opening night goalie. If you're saying it could be Rittich, I would be willing to bet a lot and give you odds that it's going to be Kemper opening night and not Rittich. So I'm very confident about that. But that'll be wild. If I'm wrong, that'll be really fun, and you'll be able to brag a lot. But we'll see.
All right.
We'll see. Okay. Someone throw it on the bet board. All right, let's take a break. And then when we come back, we mentioned that the LA lost Arvidsson. I want to talk about Arvidsson because he has a very interesting landing spot. So we'll get to that in just a sec. You're listening to Keeping Karlsson. All right, we are back. Brian and I are going through the various teams and the moves they've made in this offseason. This is part 2 of our offseason impact series. I don't know how many parts there will be, but I feel like we've covered like maybe half the teams in the league at this point, maybe not even. But next up, but it was okay. We're taking our time. Like Brian said, we're loose. We're having fun. Hopefully, we're providing some value here to the people listening. Just trying to figure out, like, are there anyone? We're looking for little hidden gems, right? Like, who's someone who maybe people don't realize is maybe worth more at this point in fantasy than they were before, and vice versa. Obviously, we covered a lot of the big names in that part 1 when we covered like Gensel and Stamkos and all of that. But I think there's still some interesting guys here. And next, I do want to go to Edmonton. Said LA got Warren Fogle, but Edmonton. They're fine because they got Arvidsson. I think I would take Arvidsson over Fogle, so that's a win right there. I guess Arvidsson obviously has a health concern, so that's the big question. Obviously, if Arvidsson just is injured for most of the season, then probably LA got the better end of that swap. The other interesting name that Edmonton brought in is Jeff Skinner got waived and got bought out by the Sabres, and Edmonton took him on a 1-year, $3 million, so they'll give him a shot. And then the Oilers re-signed Adam Henrique. So we've got now, Henrique was there only for the end of last season. So it becomes an interesting landscape over here in Edmonton where we're always trying to look for who's going to be the guy playing with McDavid or playing with Draisaitl. And then I guess especially if you can get a guy on the top power play, that's even better. Though I think that's going to be unlikely. Like, Skinner and Arvidsson are like good players and they're interesting, but I would expect the top power play is just going to continue to be McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, and Hyman. So probably Arvidsson and Skinner's value is capped. I'll be interested, obviously, to know, Brian, if you disagree with that, but it would be very hard for me to imagine one of those guys getting bumped from the top power play. But I would also, though, expect that maybe we've got Skinner and Arvidsson both in the top 6. Like, you could easily see, like, McDavid, Hyman, and Nugent Hopkins, line 1, Draisaitl, Arvidsson, Skinner. So I'm curious to know, I guess, first, obviously they're 2 different players. So I shouldn't just lump Arvidsson and Skinner together, 2 very different situations. So I'd be curious to just hear your breakdown of those guys and what kind of upside do you think they have as potential, top sixers, but power play 2 on the Oilers.
Yeah. Okay. I'll start with Arvidsson, who, could either be somebody on the second line or could also be somebody on a third line who is relied on for, like we talked about, his defensive play in LA, and that wasn't a fluke. I think he has some legit chops, and so maybe he can play with like Adam Henrique on a third line, and they can try and be a checking line together. So I think that's one possibility for Arvidsson that does take a little bit of the wind out of his sails. He had a 63-point pace in the last full season he played in 22-23. That was thanks to 25 power play points from the second unit, which isn't going to happen again. Outside of that, for the most part, like he's kind of been all over the place because he does float between these different roles. But for Arvidsson, so I guess let me put it this way. I think Jeff Skinner's upside is higher. I think there's a chance that he plays on the wing of McDavid or of Draisaitl, and he can pull out what he pulled out playing alongside Tage Thompson, or for like when he was offered the opportunity to play alongside Jack Eichel. I think there's a chance that Jeff Skinner could return. But there's also a solid chance he can't. Like, this is the thing with Jeff Skinner is you don't want to put too many eggs in that basket. So I'll say he has the higher upside, but if you're looking for your like steady hand, that's where you'll value Victor Arvidsson, who I think can give you 60 points. From the second power play, so long as he's in the top 6. If he's not in the top 6, then you're looking at more like 45 or 50. And it could be a fluid situation through the year. Like we saw the Oilers through the playoffs not being afraid to change lines or like change their line combos, like maybe a little too ready to change their line combos based on some of the fan commentary I've read, based on how things are going. So that's the one sort of thing I'll put on both these guys is whatever it looks like they're going to be doing opening night doesn't mean they're going to be doing that by the end of opening night even. So I'd take Jeff Skinner as the upside play. I take Victor Arvidsson as like a steady sort of like mid to low roster kind of guy. Is that fair? Does that speak to where to like what you asked?
I think so. No, for sure. I just wanted to get your take on those guys, and you did. I think I'm with you. I think that to me, though, there's not as much love. I think there used to be this like feeling of like if someone got traded to Edmonton, it reminds me of back when we started the podcast. It was whenever someone got traded to Pittsburgh, I was always like, oh boy, get ready. Someone's going to be playing with Crosby or Malkin. They're about to take off. And it often didn't work out that way. And I feel like with Edmonton, I feel similarly. Like obviously Hyman was the big exception. But he's now on the top power play. I really think that Skinner and Arvidsson will probably get overdrafted in fantasy leagues this year just because of the temptation to have someone playing with an Arvidsson when really it's like, Warren Fogle played with Arvidsson. Like a lot of guys have played there and like haven't really been that impactful. I don't think I'm really that interested in anyone not on that top power play on Edmonton at this point. So I think buyer beware. Like definitely I think there's going to be some value. I wouldn't leave them undrafted, but I think we are looking at, you said like 60 points maybe for Arvidsson. I think that's like best case, and probably like Skinner, you never know, but I'd probably also expect around like 50, 60. So I think we're kind of on the same page here. Like, yeah, Skinner's definitely, I agree with you, more of a wild card. Could be, we've seen him like score like 40 plus goals. So we'll see if he still has it in him. In net, I'll just mention, so they bought out Jack Campbell. Whatever, not an. I think the biggest thing in net to just point out is they didn't bring in anybody to challenge Stuart Skinner. Like they re-signed Calvin Pickard, and that's it. So there's going to be Skinner and Pickard. So clearly Skinner goes into the season. Stuart Skinner now. Oh, two Skinners on the same team. No relation? I assume no relation. Remember the wrestler Skinner? There was a wrestler named Skinner. He was like an alligator guy.
Yeah. That wasn't his full name though, was it?
I think it was just called Skinner. I think that was it. And he had like tobacco. He chewed tobacco, and like he had like black tar kind of like coming out of his mouth.
He kind of like had like Hacksaw Jim Duggan vibes, right?
No, I don't. He was not an exuberant fellow.
Oh,
I think
but
he was like a mean,
similar look. I'm looking at pictures, and I'm right. Yeah, or at least
okay. You're talking about his look, definitely not personality.
Vindicated. Yeah,
Hacksaw
he
Jim
was
Duggan
just
was
Skinner.
like, yeah. Anyway, I don't know why I'm doing this. So yeah, Stuart Skinner, I think, has the potential to be like one of the top goalies in fantasy next year. I'm just gonna say it. Like he was good last year. I think at this point he's the clear volume starter, which there aren't that many of them left in the league. I like obviously he has to actually perform, but I think he's gonna have the opportunity to play like a hellebuck number of games. So that's something to, I don't know. When we're doing Schmore goalies board, it'll be an interesting discussion of how high to rank Stuart Skinner at this point.
Yeah, I'd say pretty high. Like I think, I think Pickard is not like starting caliber. I'm not even sure he's timeshare caliber. So I think that leaves it for Skinner to just try and figure out, and like the team will carry him while he tries to figure things out if he needs to through the year.
All right, so let's go over to the team that bought out Jeff Skinner in the Buffalo Sabres. And this is a team that clearly just is, happy with, well, I don't know how happy they are, but they're sticking with the players they have. They have a lot of exciting young players that they're hoping will take a step forward. And that, like Buffalo didn't take this offseason as an opportunity to like shore up some like extra guys to, push them into the playoffs. I think their hope and plan is that their existing guys are just going to get better, and that's what's going to get them into the playoffs. You've got like Owen Power on defense, maybe takes a step forward. Then you've got Quinn and Cousins and, what's his name? Benson. I'm sure I've been missing people. I should have brought up a list, but they've got a lot of exciting young players that if they do it right, one player that I guess they decided was expendable, well, aside from Jeff Skinner, is Matt Savoy, one of their high-end prospects. They traded him for Ryan McLeod, who was a middle sixer on Edmonton. And I think the vibe I'm seeing on Twitter is Ryan McLeod is like, they brought him in not to like be an offensive guy. He's like, they needed a good, solid third line center. So I'm not going to be particularly excited for Ryan McLeod in fantasy, but maybe he's going to be a important piece of that plan to get Buffalo finally into the playoffs. Like the only signing I'm seeing, the only new player of note is Jason Zucker, who signed a 1-year contract. But even it's been a while since we've been like, I think last year I was kind of interested in him going to Arizona, and it didn't end up being that interesting. So I assume, Brian, we're not going to be promoting Jason Zucker here. It's just kind of like the same guys as last year on Buffalo. Like the interest kind of stays the same, and now maybe, I guess the one thing is like now for sure there's going to be someone else on that top line. It's not going to be Thompson, Skinner, and Tuck on that top line. There's going to be someone else that's going to be the mainstay. Who's it going to be? I don't know. Do you have a prediction? Who's playing with Thompson and Tuck, assuming even Thompson and Tuck stay together?
I thought you were just going to say, I don't know. Let's go to the next team.
I got to throw to my co-host here.
Thank you. Yeah. No, I don't know. Like Ryan McLeod? Zach Benson? Jack
Ryan
Quinn,
McLeod,
like,
third line center. That was the one thing I think is like set. Is Ryan McLeod is third line center? I
Yeah.
think that's the one. And I think Dylan Cousins is second line center, and I think Tage Thompson is first line center.
So what about where does Peyton Krebs fit in all that?
Fourth line center.
He's fourth line center.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Zach Benson was the guy we got super excited about last year. We'll see if he's readier this year. Jason Zucker, like, I don't know, Elon, it's a contract year for him. It's kind of like he's 32. He's got to do something. And I think he's going to get to play with either Thompson or Dylan Cousins, which I don't know. We've talked about him a lot, right? And in Arizona, it's like, oh yeah, this could be the opportunity. They're going to need him either in a primary or secondary scoring role. And he like barely showed up. So I think like Zucker will just probably continue to be a stream, but in a deep enough league, I'd be ready to you know me, I'm always ready to take a chance on Jason Zucker.
I left out an obvious guy. Sorry,
Jordan
the number
Greenway.
one. No, Paterka. Paterka is going to be
Yeah.
the guy I've seen. Like I know Michael Clifford is super high on him. I've been reading his stuff on EP. Is it EP Ringside, right? Where Michael Clifford is, and Dauber sometimes. But
Yeah.
anyways. Yeah, so he's predicting a big breakout, and I'm seeing some tweets as I'm like, I just like Twitter, like to search for like projected lines, and then try to find someone who's like a beat writer, and like kind of get a sense of what people are thinking. Yeah, well, I'm seeing like Paterka, Thompson, Tuck. So I would say Paterka is the person I'm most excited about.
Where are you seeing that?
Just searching on Twitter and finding people's like
Okay, but
predictions.
this is just like random people.
It's just pretty random, but that
Okay.
combined with, what Michael Clifford is saying, and Paterka's like kind of breakout last year, but it wasn't like enough to like. I think he's still gonna be available pretty late in fantasy, and I could definitely see Paterka being line one, power play one. I would say he's the third Sabre forward I draft after Thompson and Tuck.
The reason I didn't name him is because I feel like Paterka, Cousins, Quinn could be it. Like I don't know if that's a hunch or just based on like what we saw last year, but that's something I could see continuing. And so
our friend Lance Lesowski.
Yeah, we
I think
like Lance Lesowski.
Yeah, he's the main guy that generally tweets out the lines that I retweet on Game Day Tweets. So gamedaytweets.com, by the way, it's still a valuable website even through the summer. Shams and I are retweeting all the news as it comes out. But yeah, so his projection from July 5th, he had Paterka, Thompson, Tuck, Cousins, Quinn, Benson, and then Zucker, McLeod, Lafferty. So I think I agree with him. I think forget about Zucker. You're interested in that top six. Paterka, Thompson, Tuck, Cousins, Quinn, Benson, I think are your six interesting forwards.
Yeah. So I guess it's if Benson can't hang in the top six, then Zucker steps in, and then I guess the question is like Benson and Paterka seem like the movable pieces there of who's going to play where. But I hope Dylan Cousins takes a step forward again this year, and that it doesn't really matter on which line you play in the Buffalo top six, that you have an equal opportunity to succeed. You're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, if I were to predict top power play at this point, I think I'm going to expect Thompson, Tuck, Cousins, Paterka, and Dahlin. And that's a pretty sweet spot for Cousins and Paterka. Let's go Sabres. I'm ready for the Sabres to get back into the playoff race. This is getting embarrassing, right? This is like they need to do something this year.
Do you know do you know what the JJ stands for in JJ Paterka?
Okay. John Jason.
Yeah, you got it. It's
okay.
John J. There's your bar bet fodder for anyone listening. Enjoy.
So then we could go to, I don't have a link. I've been trying to link every team, but I think I hit a brick wall here.
I've got one.
Oh, hit me. Okay.
We're going to where Sam Reinhart continues his career, from where he started his
obviously.
career to where he continues it.
Yeah. So good call. So Sam Reinhart, high draft pick by the Sabres in that draft where the Florida decided, I like everyone in that draft. And so Florida traded for all the people, Sam Bennett, Sam Reinhart. Isn't Barkov also from that draft? I forget. I don't know. Oh, no. Ekblad is from that draft. He was the first overall pick.
Yeah,
so
that sounds
anyway, let's go to Florida.
Where also
yes.
Brendan. Oh, I was going to say Brendan Montour. He played in Buffalo and then Florida, but now he's no longer in Florida. Okay.
And we covered Montour in part one. We were talking about Seattle, and what was our take on Montour? It was like, well, it's like him and
Vince Dunn.
Vince Dunn. We got to figure out probably. I'm not too high on Montour. I think he'll be like whatever.
Too many questions. Like could be great. Too many questions. Go back and listen. Yeah.
But I think the interesting question now in Florida, though, this is the real interesting question about Montour. Is Montour's gone? Oliver Ekman-Larsson is gone. Those are the two guys who took turns being on the top power play in the Stanley Cup Finals. Who's left? Who's our and remember we had this all last summer. We were discussing who's Florida's top power play because Montour and Ekblad were going to be injured to start the year. So we were like, is it Gustav Forsling that's going to take over on the top power play? Is it Oliver Ekman-Larsson? Now there's no Ekman-Larsson. There still's Ekblad. I don't know if the ship has sailed or not. Like I could see this going in two directions. I could see the Panthers being like, all right, we had fun with Montour and OEL and like all these other guys, but now let's go back to what we did a few years ago. There was a time I recall where Aaron Ekblad was this like really like he was breaking out. He was turning into like one of the top defensemen to roster in fantasy because he was finally taking over from who was it that was there forever? Yandel. Yandel was there forever on the top power play in Florida. And Yandel never even missed a game. So like we never even got a chance to see Ekblad. And then finally Yandel tailed off and Ekblad took over and he was like really good. And then out of nowhere, Montour came and it was like forget Ekblad. And then in the playoffs, like I said, like even then when Montour lost his spot, it was Oliver Ekman-Larsson, but they're gone. Is this now next year, the sleeper pick of the draft is going to be Aaron Ekblad because he's going to go back to what he was a few years ago when we thought he was like a top-end fantasy defenseman? Or is Ekblad, are they done with him and maybe they go to Gustav Forsling and see what they can do with him? And they've just signed Forsling to an 8-year contract. They obviously love him a lot for more than like a power play defenseman. Like I think Forsling is like their big minute eating. Like people were saying how he should have been like a dark horse, like Conn Smythe nominee for how impactful he was in the playoffs. He gets some points. So yeah, what's your take if you had to predict right now who's running the top power play with the extended Sam Reinhart and Barkov and Kachuk and all these big names, Bennett, I guess. Who's going to be the defenseman there in game one?
Yeah.
Tell us it. Yeah.
I think it's going to be Ekblad. I think it's going to be Ekblad because really it was just last season that Ekblad was like full-time not on the top power play. And it's funny because like your question is like, is this the year that Ekblad steps back in? And this is after like he was miserable. Ekblad had a miserable regular season when he was finally healthy. He played 50 games. He had just 18 points. 4 of them came on the power play. He didn't get a whole lot of sniffs of anything, really. But then they won the Stanley Cup, so it's like, oh, okay. Like, are we back in business now? Do we love Aaron Ekblad again? He's 28 years old. This is age 28 season, and he has a history of being when he's been on the top power play. He's had 2 years where he was still like a 45, 50 point player, and then 1 year where he was a 77 point pace player. So in that year, I don't think he's going to repeat. I still think if Ekblad is on the top unit, maybe 55 points and 50 would be safe, but he's going to be my guess for who starts out on the top power play. But he's not necessarily my guess for who finishes on the top unit either. Just last year looked so dire for him, and like his shot rates were down. So that's not great. Offensively anyway, his minutes were down, and it's just not clear whether or not that's because he was still hurt or injured or working through something, or if it's because just to reflect for a second, like this several years prior, Ekblad had played 23 to 25 minutes a night. So all of a sudden him playing just, less than 21 minutes does kind of stand out as being a departure from what we would expect. But yeah, he's still going to be my pick for the top power play, but that still doesn't even necessarily, to me, guarantee fantasy relevant, fantasy relevance, yes, but stand out like Montour-like season, no, not necessarily. Possible, but not necessarily. You're muted.
Oh my gosh, Brian, what's wrong with me? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, not necessarily. That would be wild for us to come in here and be like, it's a guarantee Aaron Ekblad's exploding. But I do think that if he's back on the top power play, he had, just a reminder, 57 points in 61 games a couple seasons ago, or 3 seasons ago now. That's a 77-point pace. He's not like a totally different person. He's had a couple injuries. So I think that's a guy who I'm interested in getting in. Obviously, by the time we're doing our Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League drafts, maybe we'll have had some word from the coach. We'll have seen something in training camp. It would be nice to just get a quote, just let us know who you're planning on using. But yeah, that could be interesting. There is a dark horse, actually, I should have mentioned in the preamble here. Adam Boqvist got waived by Columbus, and Florida snagged him. Also, Nate Schmidt got waived by, and when I say waived, I mean bought out. Like, so Boqvist was bought out, Florida got him. Nate Schmidt was bought out by Winnipeg, and Florida got him. So Florida's just taking all the dregs. But Adam Boqvist is a guy who did at times play on the top power play in Chicago and in Columbus. And, you would think like, ugh, he's just Adam Boqvist, forget about him. But I feel like that's what we would have also said about Brandon Montour when he came to Florida. Like, he sort of was like kind of a nobody in Buffalo. Then all of a sudden he came in and became a superstar. I'm definitely not trying to say like guarantee, lock it in, Adam Boqvist superstar, but I wouldn't completely write him off. Maybe someone to take a shot on late in drafts. And again, we'll see some things in training camp that will also teach us. But I think I wouldn't completely forget about Boqvist at this point.
That's fair. That's fair. I don't know what else to say. Like, he did have opportunities in Columbus and in Chicago with which he did nothing. So, like, that would be the reason to, like, not get too hyped. But, yeah, change of scenery, a potential open spot, and on, like, a very powerful power play. Yeah. I wouldn't. I'm going to echo your line, which is, don't forget about Adam Boqvist.
Yeah. And this is Florida. It's like a magical place for hockey. Like, Verhaeghe turned into a superstar, like Montour. So who knows who's next? We'll see. Sam Bennett. Remember Sam Bennett? He stunk in Calgary. He became good. I don't know what it is in Florida. The other news there, I'll just mention to wrap it up, they extended Anton Lundell. I think Lundell's interesting. Brian and I drafted him in our dynasty. Again, this is more of like a future play because Sam Bennett has 1 year left on his contract. I do think the plan is for Lundell to be the third line center for 1 more year, though there were stretches in the playoffs where they put him on the wing in the top 6. So we'll see. But I'm not expecting too much from Lundell again next season, but maybe 2 seasons from now, if you're in a dynasty or something, I think the plan is he's going to become the second line center for like years to come. And maybe even top power play. Like Bennett is that for, it's like the obvious top power play guys are Barkov, Kachuk, and Reinhart. And then you have a fourth forward, I guess probably Verhaeghe. But I could see eventually like a Lundell. What's Verhaeghe's contract even? I don't even have that in front of me. But Carter Verhaeghe. Did I spell it right on the first? I did. Oh, yeah. So Verhaeghe also a pending UFA. Man, Florida's going to have this is like they already have lost like some big names from their cup win, and next year they're going to potentially lose Bennett and Verhaeghe. So this is like, there's going to be a lot of turnaround there. So all that to say, I do think Lundell might be in a good spot to, it might take him some time. It might be like the Ekblad route with hopefully not the same ending, where Ekblad had to wait a long time behind Yandel before finally getting his chance. I think Lundell could be something, but maybe we're not talking next year, but 2 years from now. So remind me. I'll set a reminder to talk about Lundell in a year. And then also in net, remember there was a time when we were like really starting to think that Spencer Knight and Bobrovsky were like 50-50. Like there's definitely a smorgasbord board where we had them in the same tier, being like it could go either way. Who's going to play more games? Obviously at this point, Bobrovsky is the starter, but Spencer Knight is like back now. He's like done with his player assistance program stint. He's ready, and then I think he'll be an interesting guy to watch. He's super high pedigree prospect. Obviously, he's had some personal things going on, so he'll be there. But to challenge him, a fun return, Chris Drieger, who had a really good year in Florida a few years back, he got re-signed. They've Stolarz, by the way, Anthony Stolarz was the backup last year. He's gone to Toronto. We'll talk about them next. But in the meantime, it's going to be Bob, and then we'll see in training camp a fun Driedger versus Spencer Knight battle to see who's going to be the backup. My vote's on Spencer Knight. That's my guess, but
interesting.
Fun to see.
Yeah, I think I'm just looking up like how many games Spencer Knight has played. So last season he played 47 games, including the playoffs in Charlotte of the AHL. He had a .905 save percentage. The year before, he played 21 games in the NHL. I kind of feel, I guess Driedger, I feel like the Panthers will be happy if Knight is ready to play the backup role for Bob or even 1B as needed through the year. But if he's not, Driedger is like their insurance policy, so they don't end up with like Jonas Johansson like Tampa did. So that's how I read it. Like I don't see Spencer Knight as being a lock. And if he needs some more seasoning, like he's still 23 years old, right? And he stepped away for a little bit sometime in the last couple of years too. So there's a lot of time for Spencer Knight to get more starts in, and it doesn't have to be in the NHL. You're laughing. Why are you laughing?
No, sorry, unrelated. So can you say that again without the "Why are you laughing"?
I think there's still time for Spencer Knight to get ready for the NHL and not have to just like enter the spotlight right this minute.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I still think Spencer Knight's going to be the backup next year. I think Chris Drieger is like depth, like if there's an injury. But it'll be, Spencer Knight at some point is going to have to really step up and prove himself. Okay. Off air. Maddie is like over the cap on our Dynasty League with like 5 picks to go still or something, 4 picks
Like
to
in
go.
the KK one?
Yeah, like he can't make a pick now because it'll put him over the cap. So I need to go raise the salary cap because they said I would. And then, they have to get it. But it's like, how high above the cap are they going to be? Like, they need to. So then their plan is to make trades, I guess.
Well,
so
no, they shouldn't. If they. Well,
I said when we were setting it up that I'll like raise the cap by like 10 million and I never got around to it, like just for the draft. And then we'll bring it back down before the season starts. But I didn't.
But like, if you're doing that. But let's think about it for a sec. Because if you're like gathering guys who are like, of value because you've gone over the cap, and then you can trade them for something of value, which like doesn't seem. Does that seem fair? It doesn't seem fair.
I mean, but they are like, they have no leverage in these trades. So we'll see like what they could even get.
Right, but they have the leverage of like if they came to us and it's like, hey, like can we have like your 15th prospects pick for this guy? And we're like, yeah, we want that guy. And they're like, oh, otherwise we'll just let him go to, like we don't have the same opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I did mention already in the chat, like at the start when someone asked what happens if they go over, and I was like, I'll raise it by like 10 mil, so I'll just do it.
So raise it by 10 mil, and then but tell him there's no more forgiveness. Yeah.
Yeah. So funny though. Like, what are they? I mean, I wonder if they had a plan in advance or if they just like.
I feel like they probably didn't notice.
Okay, so it's
That's
123 right now. I'm gonna do 133. Okay, changed it. All right. Okay, we just have to remember to change it back. Just increased by 10 mil. But yeah, you're right. We should reach out to them now and see. Let's try to find out who we can get at a bargain basement price from their team once we're done this podcast.
Before anyone else figures it out.
We could like even offer them a trade now, right? Like during the draft, we can just make a trade of like our next pick for like some guy. So something to look into.
Our next pick for some guy. Yeah.
I mean, we'll have to look at their team and see who we want.
Do you want to look now? Okay, so we should keep going.
We should make. Let's.
I kind of want to see.
All right. So if anyone wants, there's our two people.
Or do we want to do this publicly? do we want?
People that in our dynasty draft might be watching this. And
okay.
But we can look. I mean, whatever. It's fun. Let's take a look at their team here. So, what team are they? Dusty. TJ.
This is like bad strategy. By the way, you are like a very, show open player of fantasy hockey.
What do you mean? Like telling people my plans?
Yeah. Like you are like constantly like showing like, and it's cool. Like I'm fine with it, but like I am very tight lipped. Like I don't let on anything. And you're just like oh, I wish we had that guy. Oh yeah. Well, we were going to go like, it's very interesting.
I guess it's just like, I don't know. It's just for fun. It's not like strategic. It's just like, I like the vibe. Here's, I think a good, like we learned this once on the podcast from, was it Negranu or maybe one of your friends that came on? Like it was like years ago. And they were saying like there's a strategy of like, you want people to feel good about you in your dynasty league because you're building a relationship for like a long time. I want to like compliment people on their picks, like like not like bullshit, BS. But like, if I think it was a good pick, because, it's like we have war, and then, I could reach out to them sometime. Like if I want that player, why do I have to like be that, the people who are like, you want a player on their team, but you also have to neg them to try to convince them to trade them to you for cheap. It's like, would you be interested in trading Tarasenko? Like, I think he sucks, and I don't think he's good, but like, I think I'd give you like a fourth for him. What do you?
No,
it's so transparent.
Right. So I don't want to be that guy, and So which is why I like your approachability and honesty and transparency. But there was definitely one thing you said that you were like, oops, I don't know that I should have said that, or I didn't mean to say that.
What was it? Do you remember?
I can't remember. I almost took a screenshot and was to show you and be like This was not
Calm down.
like we didn't agree to share. We didn't agree to say this.
Oh, this is like giving up our plan.
Like I think you referenced me from. I'm gonna see if I can find it. Yeah, it was just like, yeah.
You know what? There's like no one on their team I want. I want Cam York, but he's only has a $1.6 million contract. I don't know. They're gonna need to unload more than just that. Like who's a big contract? Oh, maybe like Keandre Miller. Okay, maybe we'll offer them. We'll see if they want to trade Keandre Miller. I don't know. Who do we want? This team is like a whole different plan than our team.
Damn, Matty catching strays goes over.
No,
the
like
cap
I mean,
and
it's
gets
good for
his team
them.
Buried.
No, like I just mean in terms of like we're planning to contend in a couple of years, and they're like a lot of the guys they drafted have like contracts that I don't know if I love for the long term. You know, they have Sam Reinhart. You know, it's like he's awesome, but he's also locked in for 8 years. At like what is it, 10 million or 9 million? So anyhow, let's just finish the show. I guess
Let's
hopefully
keep
people
going.
watching live have enjoyed this part. So what were we talking about?
I
Oh,
actually,
Spencer
well,
Knight is where we
unfortunately I
ended.
stopped looking at his roster because I was looking for the time where you like outed our strategy.
Oh, okay.
I can't find it.
Did I delete? Maybe I deleted it. If
I
I was
don't-
like, I shouldn't
no,
have said that.
I think you like referred back to it, been like, oh yeah, I shouldn't have. Maybe I shouldn't have.
Okay, well,
I love it. It's a lot of fun to play with you.
I also just feel like it's our league. Like even if we like don't win, I want everyone to have fun. So it's kind of like a little of that. Like,
Yeah,
okay,
we're just
all right.
we're all just here to have a good time.
but I really do think we're gonna be a strong contender for like a lot of this year, and then people are gonna be like, oh, I hate Elon and Brian. Soon they're gonna hate us. In like 3 years, they're gonna be annoyed at us for
Well,
dominating.
I can't believe you got through speaking about Quinton Byfield without
I did mention that we
mentioning-
picked him.
Well, no, but you didn't mention that we have 4 of the top 6 picks from that draft from the
That's
year,
fun.
like from the 20. Did we get Lundell? We
Yeah.
did, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have
All
a
right.
2020 is our
draft.
year, baby.
I like it. We have some 2021s too.
Yeah.
Wyatt Johnston. All right. So I love Wyatt Johnston. Okay. Where were we? So let's go for another 20 minutes. I'm getting kind of tired of this.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's take another break, actually. Let's put in a commercial break here. We've been going forever. Okay.
Okay. Do you want to stop now? Are you like
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Like I already said we're going to talk about Toronto next. It would be mean to them be like JK.
okay? Let's do Toronto.
Yeah, let's see what we can do in 20 minutes. Let's go. Okay. Okay, so with that, Brian, I mentioned that we're going to go to the Leafs next. Let's do that after a quick break. You're listening to Keeping Karlsson. Welcome back to part 2 of our Offseason Impact series. We just got through talking about the Panthers, and we were talking about how they've lost Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Brandon Montour, the team that got Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Oh, and also we mentioned how the Panthers lost Anthony Stolarz to free agency. Maybe lost isn't the right word. They didn't lose them. They let them go. Or maybe they didn't have the option to bring them back even if they wanted to. But anyways, the Leafs saw the Panthers win the cup. They were like, I want that. So let's get a couple of the guys from that squad. So they have Oliver Ekman-Larsson. They have Anthony Stolarz. I think both become somewhat interesting, right? Just like for OEL, like Morgan Riley, it's just continuously we're always just like, is he really even that great for that top power play? Like maybe there's anytime there's been like Sandin at one point last year, even Liljegren, people were talking about him. So now I could see this year like Oliver Ekman-Larsson, maybe they give a shot at the top power play at some point. Again, this is not something I would like recommend like drafting OEL expecting that, but he did kind of like, I think he was awesome for like a year or two in Arizona back in the day. Then I remember Brian famously was like, for many years after being like, OEL's overrated. He's not that good. He had a high shooting percentage that one good year. Then like then the Canucks weren't listening, and the Canucks made a really stupid trade and essentially gave away, was it Cooley or Ganther, the pick for one of those awesome guys to get Oliver Ekman-Larsson. So that didn't work out. So then the league came around to think like OEL stinks. And then last year in Florida, I think he had a pretty decent year, and now he goes to Toronto, and maybe he'll be something, But I guess the more interesting conversation is definitely the goalies, because they've brought in Anthony Stolarz, who was like really solid last year. I remember anytime anyone would stream him in for a game, like when Bob needed a rest, like he did well. And their other goalies, Joseph Woll, who they've extended, who seemed really good last year for sure, but this is still a guy who's never played a full season as a starter. So I definitely don't think, but you could correct me because I know you're pretty high on Joseph Woll, and I'm not high on Joseph Woll, but I also don't see this as like a Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard situation. Like I could see this being a lot closer to 50-50, maybe a 55-45, Woll getting the edge, but Stolarz still being, getting a decent number of starts. So I'm curious to get your take on the Leafs goalies next year.
Yeah, I think Woll is like meant to get the lion's share, but Stolarz had a really good year last year.
Better than David Riddick?
Yes,
Not
actually.
that. Wow. Okay, that's saying something.
In a similar sample, well, I said David Riddick beat his expected number by 16 save points, which is like elite if you can do that for a season like that. Like really anything 10 and above, 10 save points and above is like the cream of the crop, but it's got to be over more than 25 games. Many goalies can do that. But Stolarz outperformed his expected number by 26 save points, and now like all these, like this is all just making it seem like, okay, what is this made up like nonsense that you're just citing? It's rare to see such huge numbers with goalies that have played at least a quarter of the season's games and who have a track record of like not being excellent. But Anthony Stolarz last year, 71% quality start percentage, which is outstanding. Like 24 starts, it doesn't matter. The fact that you can put up a quality start for 71% of them is fantastic. And over his career, Stolarz has almost a 60% quality start percentage, which is still like good. Anything above 55% is good. 60% is fine. 65% is like very good. Yeah, the thing is, we just haven't seen a whole lot of Stolarz in his career. He's a career .915 goalie though. Like he's been good more often than not. He's just never played more than 20 games. He's only played more than 20 games twice in a season. Once was last season with Florida. The other time was in the 21-22 season with Anaheim, which was his second last in Anaheim. But really, his whole career, he's been an above average expected goalie. I don't know if you remember, Elon, but way back in 2018-19, when the Oilers acquired him, I need to see like who else was on the team. Because I was like, this might be a chance for Anthony Stolarz to show up, and then like he didn't get a whole lot of starts. It was Koskinen and Talbot were the other goalies, and right. Stolarz didn't play well. He had an 897 percentage in. I
actually have a strong memory
of
us doing a show.
Yeah.
He stunk. But he's had good stretches otherwise. I remember one time this is burned in my brain, this memory. I wonder if it's a memory for you. But I remember at one point I called him Stoli the goalie, and you gave me like the biggest eye roll of all time.
That's not true. There's no way. There's no. I mean, there is a way. That's very possible. I don't remember it.
It's a very strong memory for me, but our memories are faulty. This was years ago.
And like it really affected you. I'm sorry if I made you.
I thought it was funny because I remember I wanted to say it more. No, it was one of those things where then I said it like all the time afterwards because I knew it annoyed you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, great. Okay, good. So it was all in good fun.
Always.
Yeah, so I think the thing with Stolarz versus Woll is Woll looked good. Like he's only played 36 NHL games for the amount of time we've talked about him, right? And he came in sort of in 22-23 when Samsonov and Murray were both injured or struggling. Woll came in, played lights out, continued to, I believe, get some playoff starts. And then last year he was not great. He was 907 save percentage, which was about league average, but his quality start percentage was less than 50%, which is bad. So you contrast that with very reliable Anthony Stolarz from last year. And I could see, like, I think I'm interested, Elon. I think all I can say here is that I'm interested to see how Stolarz and Woll share time and whether this means, like, I think Woll is going to have to play well is what it comes down to. I think he's going to get the first crack. And if he doesn't play well, I think Stolarz could come in and legit become at least a timeshare goalie or more if Woll really can't find his footing and Stolarz is. So I'd say it's a it seems like there's a possibility for a fairly even split. Keep in mind though that Wool's also young, right? He's entering his age 26 season. Solers is entering his age 31 season. So I imagine if the Leafs would love to know that Joseph Woll is going to be their goalie for the current group and for this team and core as they contend in their window. And so I think that's still why he gets the leg up in the crease battle, but he's not as much of a lock. Like Anthony Stolarz, I think is a tidy piece of backup business, and we'll see if I regret saying those words.
Yeah, I think that the Leafs. Here's the thing with the Leafs, right? I think they're thinking of next season only. Like I don't think they're like we need to get past the first round of the playoffs. We need to do something before Matthews is gone and whatever. So I would expect that they're going to go with whatever goalie they think gives them the best chance. So we'll have to wait and see. But I agree with Brian. It's probably they're both going to get a shot. So if we look at what else the Leafs did in the offseason, so they lost Tyler Bertuzzi to free agency. They re-signed Max Domi, but he's not. I mean, I don't want to say but. Okay, so Max Domi, maybe he's can be an impact guy. He wasn't huge in fantasy last year. I think we're at a point now where there's room for someone to become a mainstay in the top 6 here, taking that Bertuzzi spot. I'm seeing we've got obviously the big 4, Matthews, Marner, Tavares, and Nylander. And who's going to play with these guys? Matthews and Marner, maybe is it time for Matthew Nyes to potentially step in and become that top line winger and really have his breakout? We even saw remember Bobby McMahon last year came out of nowhere and really was doing pretty well. I feel like there's not many other options. You look at who's left here on the wing for the Leafs. Assuming Max Domi is third line center, I guess he can go play wing and then he can take one of those spots. But I think a Nyes or a McMahon, it's not going to be Yarncroc, it's not going to be Pontus Holmberg, it's not going to be Connor Dewar. So yeah, I think definitely there's going to be something. We're going to have some interest in him. I think Matthew Nyes is the clear one. I guess there's Nicholas Robertson, who's supposed to come up at some point, and he's a high pedigree guy. So Robertson, but I would guess it's Matthew Nyes. I think is a bit of a sleeper going into next year, unless you're a Leafs fan, in which case there's no such thing as a sleeper. But I could definitely see Nyes playing on the top line with Matthews and Nylander, where Bertuzzi was for a lot of the year, or Matthews and Marner. We'll see. What do you think, Brian? Now, for people watching live, they know I'm talking to nobody. But I got that out, and then I'll wait for Brian to come back, and then I'll ask him again. Because I don't know where he went. Did he message me? Oh, he did message me. Oh, he's all right. He went to the washroom. That's fair. But you gotta go. You gotta go. Jurassic Park. Hopefully, he doesn't get eaten by a T-Rex. Anyone who's here? I see there's 2 people here watching. Doesn't say who. It would be fun to know. Rob was here at the start. All right, let me look at then what's going on in my Dynasty League. See if we're going to see whose pick it is. Oh, okay, Brian's back. Phew. I did not do a good job of filibustering. I was boring there. But okay, Brian, but I did get my question out, which now I'll just ask to you.
Are we just live? Are we just rolling?
Yeah, of course, we're live. Yeah, I didn't stop the live show. I don't even know how to do that.
No, I mean, but for the podcast.
I mean, I'm going to make an edit point for when you left.
Okay, great.
Okay. The question that I threw at the empty room that you're sitting in, that now you'll pretend to answer as if you heard it the first time, is I was saying that Tyler Bertuzzi is gone, and they didn't really bring anyone in to replace him. And so I was saying that I think that someone like a Matthew Nyes or maybe even a Bobby McMahon, but then I was especially I think Matthew Nyes could be a really big opportunity for him to get that spot on the top line with Matthews and either Marner or Nylander and do something. So I was what do you think about that?
I think very highly of that. I do. I think that's a great thought. I think Matthew Nyes spent some time on my roster when he was in the top 6 through the year, and I don't see why he wouldn't get another crack. There is not a whole lot of competition here, right? I think that the one name that stands out for me from the Leafs depth chart is Nicholas Robertson, or Nick as his friends call him, to see he's still an RFA. He hasn't signed yet, so we don't know exactly what the plan is for Robertson, and maybe the amount of investment will help determine. But like, he needs to be a top 6 player. And it will, like, the other factor here to be interested in is whether or not a new coach, like, clearly Sheldon Keefe was not ready to give him extended looks in the top 6 because, like, the aforementioned Bobby McMahon got looks, ahead, over and above him. Calle Yarncroc got looks over and above him. So there is this open spot, and that spot has been a really wonderful place to produce from in the past. And maybe a new coach and a prove it kind of contract is what Nick Robertson could use. For what it's worth, like, Nick Robertson has solved the AHL. Like, last year he played 9 games in the AHL. He had 11 points. The last time he played meaningful AHL time was in 21-22, where he was also a point per game player. So I still feel like there's got to be some upside in Nick Robertson, and I'd be interested to see what he does with that spot. But I think I'm just as interested, to be honest, to see how Matthew Nyes will do with it too. So I think it's going to be one of those two, and I'll give the upper hand to Nyes, but I wouldn't rule out Robertson sneaking in there for a look at some point.
Yeah, so definitely, Brian, we need to consider Matthew Nyes when we get to our prospect draft, but we'll deal with that at a later time. But okay, yeah, so he'll be good though for a 1-year league next year, and probably you can get him probably decently. I guess we've been doing, by the way, the patrons of Keeping Karlsson, we've been mock drafting, having a lot of fun. Kevin always at some point goes and gets all the data from the mock drafts and gives us some mock draft ADP. I'll be curious to see where Matthew Nyes has been going. Let's switch over now to... I don't have a connection for this one either. Are any of the players that we've talked to have they ever been on the Islanders? I don't think so.
The ones we were just talking about?
Is there anyone we've talked about on the show so far who was on the Islanders at any point?
I don't
think so.
I don't. Wow. This has been a very Isles-free...
Well, we're about to change that.
Okay, Charlie Lindgren.
He was? I thought he was on the Habs.
He was. But there was a player, once upon a time, if I have this right, named Mats Lindgren, who played for the New York Islanders in from 1998 to 2002.
Okay, well, and just like Mats Lindgren, let's go over to his former team, the New York Islanders, who didn't do much in the offseason, but I did want to bring up one signing, and actually 2 signings, okay, and a secret signing. But first, the obvious one is Anthony Duclair, who I'm a little bit tired of. I just feel like Anthony Duclair every year, and even when he gets traded. Remember, he got traded to Tampa at the trade deadline, and we were talking about hyping up Anthony Duclair, and he was good for a little bit, then kind of fell off. I feel like Anthony Duclair always is exciting at first and falls off. I remember in Ottawa, he was an all-star one season. Then after the all-star game, just disappeared. And maybe you could blame it on coaching and deployment, but it just seems so. Anyways, I'll say this: Duclair, I'll bet you is going to get a top 6 spot on the Islanders. Maybe we're looking at Horvat, Barzal, Duclair. Why not? It could be. And then you have Nelson, Palmieri, and someone. My secret guy, actually, I think could be but I'll get to him. But anyways, Duclair could be a top liner. Could be a really good situation for him. If I draft him and he's doing well, I guess I'm giving up my spot here. I'd probably be trying to trade him because I don't know. That's the vibe I have of Anthony Duclair. But let me know, Brian, how and why I'm wrong about that.
Yeah, the thing is, he has always looked good, but he's never put up production in a sustainable way. But looking at Duclair's time, basically, you can write out early days with the Rangers didn't go well. He went to Arizona, didn't have a ton of opportunity. Also had not rounded out his game. Since then, he's been to Chicago. He's been to Columbus. And it was in Ottawa where we did start to see him tick up in terms of expected goals, shot attempts, shots at 5-on-5 and become a more reliable 5-on-5 scorer, which he was. In San Jose, I'm not sure, he didn't look like the guy. He looked more like the guy he was for the first half of his career than the most recent half. But I think I'm just going to write that off as a San Jose thing. Duclair turns 29 in about a month at the end of August. Elon, there were a couple years where he was a 60-point pace player in Florida. He was a 50-point pace player before that in Ottawa. One of those years that he paced for 64 points in Florida, he had 21 points on the power play. So for me, that's where I'm looking to see if there's room for Duclair on the power play. I don't know. You've got Barzal. You've got Horvat.
Nelson. Guaranteed.
Yeah. I
It's
think
like, who's
those are
that? But Palmieri was there last year. So yeah, I guess Palmieri is the
yeah.
guy who you bump for Duclair.
Yeah. So that's where I'm looking. That's where I'm looking to see if Duclair can make an impact on the power play. And I think the even strength scoring through his career has always been pretty strong, actually. It's just been the lack of power play deployment that's really gotten, like, been the reason why he can't maintain relevance. And the 1 year he had it, he was very, very relevant. So I think that's what I'm looking for in Long Island. I hope he gets it. If not, I think he'll still be a stream. And I don't think going to become an Islander and continue playing on a second power play unit really does anything to juice his value beyond the 50-point player we've come to expect.
Yeah, like obviously top line makes him potentially a hold, but I don't think a big impact. And we'll see. Like, yeah, we'll see how long it lasts if it happens in the first place. The other guy I wanted to mention, so you know me, Brian, in my other dynasty league, not the one we're in together, I'm a dumpster diver. It's the opposite. In our new one, we're like going young. We have a lot of exciting young talent. We'll see how we do in the prospects draft. In my other one, I've been going for it since year one. I'm always at the cap. I've been trading away all my picks, so but I still want to have some prospects that could do something. Last year I noticed a lot. I always do that now. Okay.
Wow.
Last year I noticed a lot of buzz about this guy from the KHL named Maxim Tsiplikov and how he was like in the last year of his KHL contract and a bunch of I'd see like the Leafs are going to sign Tsiplikov, the Bruins are going to sign it. Like everyone was going for him. I was really curious to see where he was going to go. I grabbed him. I've got him in my other dynasty. Maddie and I are going to hopefully reap some rewards. Maybe he can be our next Voronkov, a guy who I grabbed in a similar way a couple seasons ago that he ended up being an impact NHLer somewhat. For us it was valuable. Tsiplikov ended up signing with the Islanders. And he is like, not a kid. He's like 25 years old. He's coming off a 47 points in 65 games season in the KHL with Spartak. And throw it out there. Maybe not for 1 year, like a cupful league. I'm not saying to draft Maxim Tsiplikov, but if you're in a dynasty, you want to like grab some cheap guy, grab a minors eligible player from free agency now. I definitely think there's a spot for Tsiplikov in the top 6, honestly. Like if I'm looking at this roster, I think Anders Lee is pretty washed. I think he's a bottom 6er likely at some points in the season, if not all the season. So who does that leave for the top 6? You got Barzal, Horvat, Duclair, Palmieri, Nelson, and someone. Watch out for Tsiplikov. Just saying, just throwing it out there. Watch out for Maxim Tsiplikov.
You love your like mid-20s, like non-prospect aged Russians coming, like doing well in the KHL and coming over.
I love it when I could get them as a free agent in my other dynasty league. Yes.
Yeah. So I have nothing to say. Like, unfortunately, you probably know much more than me about Tsiplikov. Like, I'm just looking. He turns 26 this September. He has played in the KHL for several years. He hasn't been like great. Like Elon, I'm not seeing like a history of production. His last season,
just this past year, yeah.
Yeah, he had 47 points in 65 games, thanks to 31 goals. His previous career high was 10 goals. So
here's the thing with the KHL and like the stats that we don't have, I think. My impression from reading Twitter is there's a lot of like the coaches don't give ice time to like non-established players. Like I would be curious to know if like this season Tsiplikov had like double the ice time that he ever had before. But I don't know. I'm looking at like elite prospects and they don't have TOI as one of the stats. I don't know, Brian, if you have a place where it has that. But also, who cares? Because I'm not saying just pause the pod and go at Tsiplikov. But I think he could be in the top 6 to start the season. My question to you, Brian, is who else? Like, is there anyone else in the Islanders you're interested in as a top 6er outside of Barzal, Horvat, Duclair, Palmieri, and Brock Nelson? I guess you can say Anders Lee, but I really just don't see it. I think it's he's already fallen down the lineup last year.
Well, the thing is that where else does Anders Lee go?
If third line, play with Pajot and Engvall.
But like, what's he going to do there? Nothing. Anders Lee isn't helpful, I don't think, if he's not in the top 6. So I think that's what I'd say. Elon, one guy who like you might have been talking about a couple years ago and being excited about was the first round pick of the Isles back in 2019. No, not even. I'm talking about Simon Holmstrom.
Oh yeah,
who's still there. But has not really found success in the minors or the majors. And yeah, why are you so down on you? You were huge on Wallstrom for a while.
I mean, then I saw him play as did the rest of the Islanders. Is he even going to make the team? Is he even signed, Oliver Wahlstrom?
I think he's an
Is he even around?
RFA.
Yeah, I don't. I think I'm definitely over him. I haven't heard it. I haven't. You know, it's like the way I'm sort of doing this. And let me know, Brian, if this is like the way that most people do it, or if I'm unique or something. Like I'm on Twitter a lot now, right? Because I'm running GameDayTweets.com, and I'm always looking at what to retweet to put on the website, on any news or line combos. And like I feel like I follow enough. I only follow beat writers, right? So I'm having the good Twitter experience. I'm not reading a lot about. Well, I haven't gone on this morning because we've been recording a podcast. I'd imagine sometimes when there's like big world events, I can't like they sneak into my timeline because the hockey beat writers are tweeting about the big world events, which always like kind of annoys me because I didn't come on here. But I'd imagine I'm going to see some Biden stuff when I go on Twitter after we record. But anyways, but I generally see a lot of tweets from all the beat writers, and I don't think I've seen Wallstrom's name in like a couple years. So I'm not getting the vibe that anyone has any thoughts about him. Simon Holmstrom I've seen every once in a while. Maybe, yeah. But I don't think anyone's projecting a breakout. They're like, maybe he'll make the team. Maybe he'll be like middle six. So Brian, we've got so much more to go. Can I just like give a hint? We're going to do a part 3 some other time, but I'm just going to give a hint to people about what we still have to do here. Okay. Like Shane Gostisbehere went to Carolina. Is he top power play? That's a question I'll ask Brian. I'm just going to give you some highlights of what's to come. Okay. Like Chicago, a couple interesting signings. They got Bertuzzi. They got Teravainen. That could be the top line. You could have Bedard, Bertuzzi, Teravainen. That's interesting. Also, they got Brossois. I mean, we're talking Peter Mrazek as their other goalie. Like Brossois could end up being the starter on Chicago. I could see that. Winnipeg. There's nothing really to talk about with Winnipeg. Okay, pass on them. But San Jose got Toffoli from Winnipeg. Columbus got Sean Monahan. Monahan might center Gaudreau. Detroit, signed Tarasenko. They extended Evander Kane. So we got some stuff. It never ends. But we'll wait till part 3, I think. So thanks, everyone, for listening. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Keeping Karlsson. I promise, I'm pretty sure I could promise. Brian, let me know if I shouldn't be promising this. I promise that we won't take as long to do part 3 as we did to do part 2. I know it's been a couple weeks. We'll get to part 3 sometime the next week or so. And yeah, if you like the show, make sure you're subscribed. We're going to keep coming out with content now, moving forward for the rest of the summer. Before we know it, the season's going to start. Hopefully, we'll be done talking about all the free agents by then. And definitely also, if you want to come hang out with the patrons, now's a great time because we still have our $1 summer promotion going. So you sign up for a patron for the minimum amount you can, and you get join our community. We're doing mock drafts. We're doing player rankings. Trev's been running that, doing an awesome job. Thanks so much to Trev. Kevin, thanks so much for taking over the mock drafts. I was running that for a bit, but Kevin wrote a fancy script, and now he just presses a button, and that's how we train for the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League. That's what we're mocking for, and that registration is open, so you can make sure that you're going to be in our league. Any patron can join the cupful, and we're going to send out the invites in early September, probably like a week into September. You'll get your invite once we cut off because that's the deadline. September 1st, I believe, or something around there is going to be our registration deadline, and then we're going to put everyone into their tiers and send out our league invites. So lots going on. Come check it out at keepingkarlsson.com/patron. But with that, Brian, let's cue the outro music. Why don't you go ahead and read us the credits?
Okay, I was just...
you weren't ready for that.
Well, no, I was, and then I decided to see if I could find Maxim Tsiplikov.
Has ice time?
Time on ice. Oh, do you know that Nikita Gusev...
He's still good, right?
He led the KHL in points last year.
Do you think he'll ever come back and take another crack at the NHL, or did he just hate it?
I think that, for whatever reason, it didn't go badly. Oh, Tsiplikov. And Nikolai Goldobin, 78. Quant Hockey has this information.
Oh.
There's some funny names on there. But I don't see time on ice there. Yeah, I don't see time on ice. I'm just looking at the KHL website.
Mm-hmm.
Which is I need to change to be in English. Wow, they also you can view it in Russian, English, or Chinese.
Intercontinental. Isn't it called like the Intercontinental Hockey League or something like that? What does KHL stand for?
The K stands for continental.
Yeah. Oh, continental, not intercontinental.
No.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna look for 30 more seconds here.
Okay.
I know you're eager
We could talk about our next pick here.
Why
coming
can't
up.
I spell Tsiplikov?
Jake Bean was taken. I was
Me and
kind of
Bean.
wondering if we should take Jake Bean or not, but he is making a crazy. Like Calgary is clearly just trying to hit the cap floor. They signed Jake Bean for 1.75 mil, a guy who might not even like make the roster every day. It's a silly contract, and he's like it's a nepo signing. He's like the son of like one of the executives on the team.
Oh,
I was
really?
reading.
Yeah. I found Siplikov's time on ice.
Okay. So
All right.
okay, so I said go ahead and read us the credits. Then you can say before I do that.
Okay. Before I do that, Elon, I have located Maxim Tsiplikov's time on ice numbers on the KHL's English site. So he played 17 minutes and 45 seconds this season. And the season before, he played it's a very frustrating thing I have to scroll back and forth, it all like the years he made the playoffs, like it shows those in the same charts. Like I have to, last year he played the same amount of time. So there goes that theory.
My theory is incorrect. So
The year before he played 6. This is so annoying. Probably even more annoying. To the season before that, he played 2 minutes less per night, 2 fewer minutes per night.
So we'll have to find out. We'll have to bring on a KHL correspondent to tell us why Maxim Siplikov broke out last season.
I'm going to tell you. He had a 19% shooting percentage versus his career 7 to 10% number.
Forget everything I said. The Islanders made a big mistake. This is going to be a disaster. They have nobody else. All right. Read us the credits, Brian. Did I cue the outro music? I stopped that. I don't even start it. Actually, if you're listening, you're like, why did he say cue the outro music and no music started? Because that would be ridiculous in editing. So music starts now. Go ahead and read us the credits.
This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dobber Hockey and powered by our patrons, including our very first one and super supporter, Patty, and the rest of our super supporters, Ricard, David, Ryan, Tom, Zach, Andrea, Sammy, Ivan, Philip, Aaron, Patrick, Brian, Jordan, Michael, Don, Roman, and Paul. You already mentioned the $1 thing. Cool. A couple registrations open. People are joining. They're becoming patrons to sign up for the Cupful. We are actually already up. What's the latest count? 424 Cupful managers already registered for next year. The only one that's missing is you. Like all of you, the thousands of you that are also listening. We'd love to have you come join. And thank you, as Elon said, to our Cupful coordinator, Kevin A. Bear, for running our mock drafts and getting everything nice and tidy and set up for Cupful Season 10.
And for posting delicious food pictures on our Discord. Every couple weekends, Kevin has like some party, and then he's just like having this huge cookout. It always looks amazing.
He's the Cupful coordinator for us and the barbecue coordinator for like his whole town, it seems. Thank you, Elon and Shams, GameDayTweets.com, all the good stuff. Like I'm on Puckpedia, by the way, and like they have like little sidebars with beat writer tweets for teams or players, but like it's everything they tweet. It's just nonsense. Like someone was like posting about McDonald's on like one of the pages I was just on, which I've shared with you an idea. But anyway, not shade on Puckpedia, but that's just flowers to GameDayTweets.com. Logo art by BrandonWeeb.com. Outro music by Pat Roach. This episode was researched with help from Dobber Hockey, Frozen Tools, Dobber Prospects, Natural Stat Trick, Evolving Hockey, Puckpedia, The Athletic, hockeygoalies.org, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, and KHL.ru.
All right. Great job, as always, Brian. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll be back at you with part 3 sometime soon. Like I said, so just make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. And, Brian, while we schedule this next recording session, what should people do as they enjoy this quiet time of the off-season?
Please, during this quiet time, go enjoy it. Like find a friend, find an old friend, reconnect, do what you want. I don't know. I don't know why I'm trending towards life advice here. Just keep being you. And when it comes to fantasy hockey, just make sure that you're doing all you can so that it can be for everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching live. We're down to one person.
Oh,
I wonder who it is.
rough.
But whoever you are, we appreciate
We lost
you.
half our viewership.
At one point, we were up to 5. We were up to 5 at one point.
That's
I saw.
embarrassing.
Then you left to go to the bathroom, and it plummeted. That was that.
What if I was all the other listeners?
Yeah. Should we talk about our next pick live on the air here, or is that like really dumb? Someone could be listening, but also these are all. Oh, it says 0 people, and so what are the chances they'll come and check out this end of the
Okay.
show and snipe
Sure.
us? Here's some names. It's really nobody. Like, okay, so we can go with a goalie. Actually, maybe let's do this off the air. Okay, bye everyone. See you.
But we're staying on camera.
Yes.
Yeah.
End stream.
And stream.